Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome
Happy
to
Sunday,
Extraordinary Women.
everyone.
Yes, we have Sister Sophia in the house. All right, say hi, Sister Sophia.
Hello. Happy holidays for whatever holiday you may be celebrating.
Yes, happy holidays, everyone. Today we're talking about millionaires and why they marry. The reason why this show is so near and dear to my heart is because of what's going on right now, okay, in today's time. A lot of men who make under six figures are apprehensive on getting married because they are afraid that people are going to take whatever little money that they got. All right. Whereas when you look at millionaires, they don't have an issue with marriage. Okay. They marry freely, they marry repeatedly, they just have no issues. But there is something energetic about why millionaires marry. So we're going to discuss this on today's show. Please, if you want, give us a call to give us your opinion on this topic. You can call us at 347-620-6771. Again, 347-620-6771. Now, Sister Sophia, we got a lot to talk about because, girl, we know you were a millionaire once upon a time. Okay. You're still a millionaire energetically. Okay. I
Yes,
will, you are.
yes.
Can you give me a little spiel about your marriage?
Well, when I
When you
got
were married.
married, huh? And
I
I've
said,
been
yeah, when
married,
you were married.
I'll tell you the truth, I've been married three times. The first two husbands were not financially equal to me. In other words, I made more money than both of them. So when I got married the last time, this man had more than I had. He made more money than I did, and he was a homeowner. At the time we met, I wasn't a homeowner, but I did have a plus six-figure income. I was an IT professional, and so I made a lot of money.
Hmm.
And I had my own, at the time I had my own Lexus, it was at the time it wasn't the LS 430, it was ES 300, I think
Right.
it was. But I had resources, I had assets and things like that. I just wasn't a homeowner at the time. I had been years before, but at that time I wasn't. So when we got married, he was a homeowner at the time, and we got together, dated for a year. And I think I've told the story about I married him on the same day that we had our first date 1 year later. And once we got married, then we were able to grow much faster because we combined resources. We moved into a bigger house, and everything was wonderful for a number of years. Of course, he passed away, but it was one of those things where we were able to build more together, and there was more stability than there ever was when I was by myself. And the whole thing, the psychology behind men with money versus men that don't have a lot of money, and not to put anybody down, but to have less than a six-figure income in today's world is not much. It's a salary and it's an income, but you really need to build with it. It's a building income. When you've got, when you're making somewhere between like maybe 60 to say $100,000 a year, that's a builder's income. You've got enough excess. You can live a nice life, and you have enough excess to start investing and doing other things to build into wealth. But as I was sharing with Yolanda earlier, I don't know if it was Forbes, it was one of those wealthy organizations that do a lot of figuring of what, economy is and what our standard of living is. And they were saying in today's world, a wealthy couple is considered a couple with more than 2.7 million in assets. Now,
Hmm.
in my opinion, I thought that was pretty low.
Yeah, that's not a lot.
Yeah, I've heard some other wealthy people say if you're not in the double digits of millions, in other words, 10 million plus, you really don't have the resources to have access to some of the really best things in life, including legal access.
Right.
People with money have access to legal resources that the rest of us don't even know exist, let alone can use. So they're saying 10 plus million is more like a wealthy life. And I kind of tend to agree with that because the volatility of our economy, especially now, If you have less than that, it can easily be wiped out with a downturn or an emergency. Just ask some of these people who had, downturns, who've had economic experience with our current financial system, and companies, went bankrupt or whatever may have happened, and now they're looking at resources drying up because they're not able to maintain. So
Exactly.
you have to consider, when you are an individual, and especially in your 20s and 30s, until you can reach that seven-figure income, and even a little beyond that, you're in a building stage. And it's very important and very critical, actually, that you consider using your resources to build, as opposed to thinking, well, hey, I'm making it now, because that's not true. It doesn't take much to wipe that out.
Exactly. What I see in right now is on the internet, there's a lot of programming going on amongst the young people that, especially with women, that you must marry someone that already has money or, is a millionaire. But there aren't that many millionaires to go around. So the fact that you was talking about the building part, maybe, if people will allow themselves to be in relationships where they can build together and they can amass an amount of wealth together. But we are in a time period where so many people are so selfish. Oh my goodness. And it's all about trying to get over or get somebody. No one is really true anymore at all. It's really scary out there as far as in them dating streets. So I wanted to ask you, do you think it's worth that women at this point in life marry at all? Because they can really get wealth on their own if they want to. And most women who do stay single, um, they they fare well as they get older at times because they're able to amass a certain amount of wealth for themselves. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, and you hear me say that a lot about a lot of things. And this is really one of the classic cases of it's a double-edged sword,
Hmm.
because two people together can do more than one person on their own. And the reason I say that is, when you've got a two-income household, one income can cover like living expenses, and and the things that you need to be comfortable, while the other income could be going towards the resources for building and creating wealth. um, Women now have the opportunities to do things that they didn't have 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so it's important for things to be put in perspective. As far as marriage is concerned, I absolutely believe in marriage when it's between two good, equally matched, or two spiritually mature people. Because I'm very concerned about this whole mindset where our government is pushing this thing of the trad wife, the
Yeah.
woman who stays home and takes care of the kids while the husband goes out and makes a living. That's a trap. It is a trap. And the reason it's a trap is because men are just as susceptible to injury and death and illness as women are. And despite the structure that makes a woman think that, oh, I'm secure, I got a husband, he's going to take care of the bills and stuff, I'm going to stay home and be mom and wife. But those men sometimes get sick, they get injured, they die, or worst case scenario, they walk away.
Yeah, they just
And
get tired of the relationship, so they
yeah, sometimes you think everything's okay, and you're doing being mom and all this stuff and doing what you can do, and everybody knows being mom is a hard job. So
it is.
maybe you're not taking as much time to be beautiful and ready and gorgeous like you were when you were dating, and you don't realize that he's coming home maybe looking at you sideways, thinking, "Wow, she looks tired and worn out. She, kids running around, and she's trying to get dinner on the table, and then when she's through with all of this, she's like, I don't want to be bothered, I need to go to sleep because she's tired." And what is not being said from the husband may be, wow, this is boring. She doesn't have time for me anymore. She's always taking care of the kids and I'm left over here. All I do is go to work and make money. And believe me, a lot of men start thinking that way. It's not reality. It's not the way things should be, but because the communication's not there, it can drop into this bucket, of misunderstood communications. But I've had several women, some of them have been successful women now who have come out of terrible situations, like where their husbands walked out and left them and ran off with another woman, or just got tired of the situation and left them. And there she sits with kids and a house and a bunch of bills and expenses and no income anymore. And then they fight her for support.
Yeah.
So and it becomes a situation where now she's trapped with no finances, got kids to take care of, and he may be, knows where he may be. And please, man, I'm not putting you down. I'm only stating what happens. But in a situation
We don't have to
where,
explain ourselves.
well, I just don't, because sometimes men feel like, they get,
Because they know one thing they're going to do is play dumb. They know these things exist.
these
Okay.
things exist
They
and they
know
happen.
these things exist. So let's not play dumb, audience. Like,
And I don't, I'm not bashing them, but I want them
nature.
to see it from a different perspective. So maybe they aren't so quick to walk away and think that they shouldn't support the family, because those children deserve better than that. And sometimes men get overwhelmed and they feel like, well, I just can't handle this anymore, and they take off. And I know, because I had it happen to me when I was much younger, when my kids were little. But that's something that happens. But what I was going to say is, if you get two people who are, and I made the comment earlier, spiritually or let's say emotionally mature, they come together with the understanding that when you do get married and you come together, especially when children start being involved, you come together with a mutual responsibility. It's much easier to hold a marriage together when there are no financial pressures than it is when there are financial pressures. I used to, as you mentioned, I lived at a time where I was among wealthy people and I had money myself. And I remember some mentors that I was studying with at the time say more marriages stay together because of the money than fall apart, then they fall apart, because when there is no money or there's a shortage of money and you're always fighting about bills and stuff, that's a tremendous amount of pressure, and tends to be a lot of finger pointing in the process. But a couple that has money, even when the marriage starts to go south, they know that to break up that relationship means dividing assets, losing assets, expensive lawyers, and lawyers will play you like a fiddle to get as much of the money that they can from you. When they see you coming and you got resources, they start salivating at the fact, oh, we can stretch this out, make them fight and disagree for a year, and look at all the money we can make. Because lawyers a lot of times will charge you $15 to answer a phone call that has one question.
I remember my lawyer charged me $35 for 15 minutes. And I said, now that is ridiculous. I just had.
Well, sometimes they'll charge you that just to do a copy. Well, not they don't do Xerox copies now, but they
certainly bill you for it.
Little thing.
Yeah.
And to write an email may cost you $50 nowadays. So the point I'm making is, when a lot of couples sit down and look at the assets and resources they have, they figure out, you know what, we need to stay together, because to tear all this up means starting over. And they don't want to do that because that's a lot of work. So they find ways to stay together. Sometimes they're in public a couple, but maybe in private they're not.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah,
they're not. But even if they aren't all together in private, they're still in agreement of what they're going to do to keep the relationship intact, to preserve resources, to preserve the finances. So many couples that we see that have money are good at putting on the front and putting on the show, and they know that for their own careers, for their friends and presentation in the public, it's worth it to figure out how to make the relationship work than it is to tear it up and try to start over. Not to mention, being single ain't all it's cracked up to be.
So why not?
Well, because when you're single, especially out of a relationship where you got kids and other things, when you're single,
Mhm.
you are dealing, and I'm talking about like divorced single, not talking about single, like I've never been married, but I'm talking about when you're divorced. For a lot of people, trying to find another partner that you can trust, because if you got assets, there's always this thought in the back of my mind: are they working to be with me because of me, or are they working to be with me because I got something? And sometimes you can never be sure until you find out they are for real or they're not.
Well, it
Um,
depends if you're a man or a woman. Just like somebody said to me the other day,
our standards are
you
different.
could,
That's true.
yeah, if Jay-Z was to walk into McDonald's, he can date and marry the cashier.
Right.
If Beyonce was to walk into McDonald's, she can't date or
You
marry the
can't do any of
cashier.
that. No, she's got to
So
find someone her equal or above.
are equal.
And,
So
and
with
that's a
women,
double
it's
standard.
always going to be different. It's always
That's a
going to
double standard. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of women are behind the fact that these relationships don't break down. I remember, I think I shared the story with you the other day. One of my clients, who is a therapist,
be. Hmm.
when he was younger, was working in this high-end furniture store. And he said a lot of wealthy women used to come in. He lives in California, and there's a lot of wealthy people in that area. And he said the wealthy women used to come in and they're buying furniture and they're picking out this and that and the other. And he was a designer, so he had a lot of good ideas about how to put pieces together for their rooms or whatever. And he said it was always a surprise when women came in and they picked this out and picked that out. And then he started helping them put together with the accessories. And he would always say, well, what's your budget? And she'd be like, oh, I don't have a budget. Whatever I want is what I'm going to buy. And he said it was interesting how once he got into kind of like a conversation relationship with the woman, she would share things like, oh, my husband has money and I just get to spend his money. I just get to shop and whatever. And he's got a girlfriend and I don't care because he's not bothering me. And, he said, I was always so floored at how many women, especially women that were more mature, where the kids might have been gone to college or grown and gone. He said, but I was surprised at the number of couples, the number of women who came in and they were living their lives and being well taken care of, and their husbands were off business traveling or doing whatever the husband was doing. And she was content to just be Mrs. So and so in name only, because she still had the support and the resources to live the life that she wanted to live without worry. So sometimes the money is what keeps people in a relationship, because they're not looking for another partner. They're just looking for, and as you get older, the security that that relationship can provide. And believe me, when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's one thing. But when you start hitting 50 and 60 and 70, having those
You
resources in
don't
touch,
care.
it's, you don't care when you're younger, but when you get
Don't
older, the
care.
resources are what matter, because
Right.
at that age you can't do it all over again, and you would rather at that point in time find a way. Let's make this work so we can keep the resources. You do your thing, I do my thing, and we'll stay together in name only and show up
You'll let him
and
cheat in
stuff like
peace,
that.
basically. You're gonna let him cheat in peace.
Well, yeah, whatever. Because a lot of times men in their 50s and 60s, because they start having testosterone issues,
Right.
really kind of feel like they need a younger woman to stimulate them. And they've been with this one woman that they've been married to for 20, 30 years, and she's not necessarily as enticing as she used to be. And so he's wanting something younger and more stimulating, because maybe she's just become too familiar. And that happens a lot. And
Yeah.
because of that, he'll decide to have a girlfriend, somebody he picks up at the office or in some, situation. And a lot of times they're college girls who are looking for someone to help support them through school. But the thing is, the people who have the resources, see, the wealthy are different. They don't see things, first of all, they don't
They
look at
really
things the
don't.
way
They don't look at things
they're
that
different. And so
yeah.
for them, for a wealthy couple with, a company or assets and resources that they don't want to let go of, they arrange and make agreements to have freedom in their relationship, so that they don't end up tearing everything apart, because divorces are expensive. I mean, look at the Gates. Belinda walked away with billions. Melinda,
And that's
whatever
the
it
thing
is.
I kind of like wanted to touch on. So I dated a guy, he was a millionaire before. And he really, I think he prepped me for my future money self. I really do, because he taught me how to think like a millionaire. He said it's all in your essence, it's all in your energy, it's all in your mindset. That is it. You have to have that mindset before you really do become a millionaire.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and we dated for a bit, and I remember his whole entire thinking when it surrounded money was just different. Like he too um wasn't scared to get married. Matter of fact, he wanted to marry me at one point, but his whole mindset was like, I remember there was somebody in the media that was getting a divorce. And I was like, oh my goodness, he's giving this woman $20,000 a year. I mean, no, a month, and that's just too much. What's she going to do with 20,000? This is my little negative mindset thinking. And he said, "Wait a minute." He said, "You're not getting this." He said,
That's not a lot of money
twenty
for them.
thousand dollars, only $240,000. This man is making $50 million a
Yeah,
year.
because that's not a lot of money for them. When it's all about perspective.
So yeah, so he had to break that down to me to let me know that ain't even a smidget of how much he has to give away to this woman. So why even he just changed my mindset regarding money.
Yeah,
And on
yeah.
top of that, he made a good point. He said Michael Jordan, when he divorced his first wife, Juanita, he gave her like $500 million, something like that. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, she took half his wealth. That's sick. That's crazy. He said, but when he walked away from her, he was able to double his wealth into the billions afterwards. He was not afraid to make more money. It's just a mindset. It's an energy, it's a mindset. That's it. He said that's
It's
why
all
he's
energy.
the one who said millionaires are not afraid. He said true millionaires, multimillionaires are not afraid to get married. And I'm looking at Jeff Bezos, okay? I'm looking at a lot of other men who are just not afraid to take that plunge with women. They aren't. There is
Well,
an industry
and then too,
around too.
there's also the prenup agreements, which 30 years ago they weren't that common, but now today they generally are, which protects a lot of the assets and wealth. Most
Bill
people
Gates
with
and them
money,
obviously didn't have some like a prenup.
some of them don't, especially in like Michael Jordan's case. When he first married her, he was just starting out, playing. He didn't have a lot of money back then, so there wasn't a whole lot to protect. And yet, um, to get out of a bad situation, and depending, I mean, a lot of the situation depends on the reason why there's a divorce.
Right.
Sometimes men uh, get rid of their wives and give them a whole chunk of money because they don't want scandal. There may be something going on that they don't want publicized, and so they
A
come to an
baby or
agreement.
whatever.
Yeah, you come to an agreement. You're not going to say anything about this here. Here's a bunch of money. Just let's just go our separate ways. So, like I said, they're different, and the way they see money and assets is it's not the way we do. We see, when it comes to our income, especially when you're down, in the average where most people are, we
Mhm.
see things as how much I lose, what you're going to take away from me, and what I got to give up. They look at it from the standpoint of how quickly can I get this done so I can continue to go make more money, because
Right.
they already know that money begets money. They already know that the circle of people they run with and the things that they are able to do is only going to grow when they get out from under this difficult situation. So and it's partly called what they call protecting their energy. A long
Right.
drawn out divorce and scandal is very energetically draining, and it brings a lot of negativity and difficulty into the situation. That too can break your financial stability and wealth. So for
Mhm.
them, it's worth it to get rid of the bad situation as quickly as possible to protect their energy so that they can continue to go ahead and make more money. They
Okay.
realize there's
That
more
part.
where this came from. But if I
That
spend too
part.
much time fighting about it, then I'm losing it. And friends start to walk away because they don't want the drama trauma. They don't want to get caught up in that stuff. And that's where the real assets are, in their circle of friends and associates where business happens. So
Right.
when we're in the mindset that we are in, we are fearful, we are loss conscious, we
Hmm.
see lack and limitation, we don't see possibility.
Yeah.
And so until you get to a point where you've made real money, you don't understand the difference between how to make money and continue to grow it versus, oh, I might lose this or this might happen. That's a very a limited mindset, and that's going to cause more loss.
And when
And
you
that,
have that limited mindset, it makes a lot of men very difficult to date, because
yeah,
if you're so concerned that this little plate of dinner is $50 and you're going to be without $50, then you're never going to have any money if you really feel like this $50 is taking you out of your way, and that's what I'm seeing with
I'm,
a lot of
when you
that's what
mentioned
I'm seeing with
earlier
dating
about,
now. Yeah,
you
a lot of people want to
talked
do
about
good.
me having that millionaire mindset. Um, Even when I was living in Sedona, which, I haven't done it in over a year now because of the things that have happened this last year. But for me to go out and have sushi and spend $80 on one meal by myself, it's nothing.
Child, I
When
do
I
it all
was,
the
yeah,
time.
yeah, I remember when my husband and I were married,
Yeah.
we used to have friends that we would get together with on Friday evening, and we have a dinner out. And it wasn't like it was a celebration or anything. We would just go out to dinner. There was this one restaurant in Orange, California, I think it was. It was a very exclusive restaurant, and you didn't know it was a restaurant from the outside because it really looked like a house, like a big house.
Mhm.
But you had to make your reservation 6 months in advance because the place is always booked. And you would go in, and dinner was the experience. It wasn't like a regular restaurant where you go in, sit down, eat for an hour, whatever, get up and leave. You would come like 6:37 for the cocktail hour, and then you were seated, and and you have the cocktail hour while people are arriving in the wine cellar, which was down
Mhm.
at the bottom of the house where the wines and champagnes were, and it's like a wine tasting. You're tasting wine and little hors d'oeuvres and stuff, and then they bring you up to the level where dinner was served, and it was only probably maybe 15, 20 tables at the most in
Mhm.
the various rooms. But long story short, the dinner was somewhere between $400 and $500 a person,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the chef was cooking special stuff that you wouldn't get in a restaurant menu. And they would have like three main courses that they would offer for the night that you were there. So you had a choice of a vegetarian, or maybe a fish or chicken, and a beef dinner. You'd have a choice of what they were serving for that night.
Mhm.
Um, but you were served on the finest china and the finest crystal, and you had the 20 tables may have had four, maybe five waiters, so your waiter was never far away. But the experience is what you bought. I keep thinking the name of it was the Hobbit House, but I don't remember if that was it. But anyway, I just remember well, it was about six of us, and we made a reservation and all went to dinner that night. And it was quite the experience of what first class food service is like. Now, we didn't like do it on a regular basis. We only went there once, maybe twice, during the time that we were together. But I
Mhm.
always remembered how different you feel and how different you're treated when you're in a place where money lives. In other words, people that can afford to do things like that, it's a whole different environment than running down to Outback or some other, restaurant where you go in and it's the regular everyday people. They
Mhm.
expect different and they receive different. They are treated differently.
It's true.
Um, yeah, it's a whole different mindset experience. And when you get a little taste of it, sometimes it goes to the heads of some people. It didn't go to my head, but I just thought, wow, this is just absolutely unbelievable. It's like being in a fantasy world.
Yeah.
Um, and yet I really thoroughly took advantage of it. I sat there and let them wait on me and do everything, like you didn't really touch anything except the glass and the silverware when you're eating. They would put the napkin on your lap and they would put things out for you and line. You come in and you eat one course, and they pick up the silverware and the plates and stuff, and then they come back and replace the silverware with something else. You didn't have to really ask for anything.
Right.
And this is the
They just provided to you automatically.
everything. They watched you. They could see what you needed, or they would come and ask you, would you like this? Would you like that? And, come show you the bottle of wine they're getting ready to uncork and pour for you. It was just a different level. And so when you think about how wealthy people live and the way that they are treated when they, walk past you in a restaurant on the way to the first class lounge, and you're sitting on, chairs waiting for the plane to board, and they're sitting in the first class lounge, and then when the plane is ready to board, they come out, walk on the plane and they're seated in first class before you ever get into the, to the line to load. In some cases, they are taken in back doors and down a different walkway and put on the plane before you ever get called to the gate.
Sure.
So it's about the way they live and the way they think. So for them, money, because it's only energy, is just another form of energy. And they get into the mindset of, I am abundant, prosperous, and successful, and money is who I am. And this is how I live. And for them to not have it becomes the unusual. It's like, what do you mean you don't have money? What do you mean you aren't this and you aren't that? And I've been on both sides of the fence, and I can understand how they think. I don't like the way it makes me feel, but I can understand why they think and are the way they are. Because to bring someone into their circle who doesn't understand the mindset is depleting and disruptive to their energy. And they protect their energy like they protect Fort Knox, because it's destructive for them.
This is why you made a good point. This is why they often say Black women specifically should not marry down, because there is an energy that goes with marrying down. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I also believe that sometimes when a woman does marry down, she loses something. And a lot of women, they do lose some of their wealth. Even though after divorce, they're able to build themselves up again. But a lot of them do not get married again. When I look at Mary J. Blige, for instance, Jill Scott.
Well, Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, Whoopi Goldberg.
She's a big example of it. She learned her lesson. She's like, no, never again.
She don't even want a man living with her.
Yeah, and she says they can't even spend the night, because she ended up having to give her husband, when she got divorced, she had to give her husband half her income, and she said he never wrote a joke. He never stood on a stage. He don't know nothing. And I had to give him half my money. And she never, ever, she would never let herself get in that mess again. But that.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like we're back.
You're back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
But yeah, I was saying why a lot of wealthy people don't like their children dating people who are not wealthy.
That's another thing that we talked about the other night. They want them evenly yoked with other wealthy people. There is a mindset that goes along with with people who have money versus people who don't have money. This is why wealthy people often have their children go to different schools and things of that nature. They're not going to put their kids in public school. Hell no.
No, because there's too much lack and limitation and too much negativity surrounding them. And, up until recently, probably the last 20, 30 years, a lot of wealthy people, and in other countries, they still do. The wealthy arranged marriages for their children. Their children didn't grow up to fall in love and freely be able to marry who they want. That's a relatively recent thing. And that was also to protect the wealth, to protect the family income, to keep the negative mindset out, at a distance, so that it wouldn't come in and become disruptive to the energy of wealth and stability. It sounds terrible to us because we are a different world.
It doesn't sound terrible to me. I understand the
No, it
reason why.
doesn't to me either, because I understand it. But
I
to a lot
understand
of
the
people,
reason
it's
why
like, oh,
totally.
yeah.
It's just like now, like, okay, for instance, Ebony K. Williams, who's a very successful lawyer and media personality, once said that she is not going to date the bus driver because she said that so many men, specifically black men, degraded her and made her out to be some type of monster. And
Hmm.
I'm like, but they don't understand. Like, she's a woman of a certain type of status, and she's accumulated some wealth, and she's a self-made millionaire. Why would she date the bus driver when she, first of all, don't have to date the bus driver? And secondly, the bus driver is really not going to understand where she's coming from.
And
Okay.
first thing he'll do is start to criticize her and tear her down.
Right.
Accuse her
Exactly.
of doing this, and you think you're to this, and you think you're to that, and who do all of that stuff starts to wear on you. It's verbal abuse,
Hmm.
which we don't really consider it that, but when someone, especially someone who is in your heart, starts to degrade you and tell you things about yourself that are not uplifting and supportive, it begins to tear you down, and that feeling of hurt and guilt and being unsupported and being negative, it does eventually knock your feet out from under you, because you start to feel less than. You
You
start to
do.
doubt yourself. And
Yep.
you go into that, well, maybe they're right, some of the things they say, and then you're fighting and arguing a lot. And none of that is conducive to creating wealth and stability.
It's not.
So, when
It's
we
just
talk
all
about
about
wealthy,
energy too. It's that
yeah,
energy thing.
everything is energy. Everything is
Everything
energy.
is energy. I remember when I dated this guy, we were together for quite some time, but at the very end, when he saw me, my business started to take off, things was doing very well for me. And even him in his own right, he was doing very well. But he used to say to me, "You think you all that?" And I'm like,
I
at
am
first,
all that.
yeah, at first I was like a little taken back, like, is this you talking to me? Like, oh my God, I
Yeah,
feel
really.
unsafe. But then one day I said to him, I said, no, you think I'm all that. You think I'm all that. That's why you keep projecting and saying, I think I'm all that. But needless to say, I knew I could not be with him for
Mm-mm.
much longer because we became equally unyoked.
Exactly.
We were not yoked together. Okay. We were not
Exactly.
yoked together. So I said, let me just let this relationship go, because, and he was happy when I let it go, because he was like, it kind of made him feel good. And actually, when I let it go, he went downward, because
Mhm.
now he didn't have to put on this air that he had to be at a high level, because of my energy, I made him perform at a high level, but he really didn't want to perform at a high level. He wanted to perform at his lowest level.
Well, a lot of times men think, and because of the conditioning, and this comes from a lot of times from the white men's definition, men
Yeah,
think they have to be higher and above a woman in order to feel like they're a man, to feel like they're um, somebody. And that's a very negative and very destructive way to think too, because in in situations where maybe there's disagreements or arguments, it can come off in a very, like I said, critical
it
way,
is.
where
Yeah,
you start to put the woman down to try to keep her in her place. People who are wealthy and who are happy in their relationships don't break each other down that way. That's not to say they may not get an argument and maybe say
their
angry things,
arguments are way different.
but they're different when you are when you're maintaining a lifestyle. One of my mentors talked about situation where, he's a very wealthy man, and he talked about a situation where there was someone in his life who pretended to want to be supportive and on the same level, but she was a drama queen. And as much as he said, as much as I did to try to please her and do for her, and he was very generous and everything, she was never satisfied. So when you are dating someone and in a situation before you're married, this hopefully before you're married, and you find someone is never satisfied and never, they put you down or try to criticize you or say things to you that make you feel bad about yourself, it's time to walk away before it becomes so close, you get so emotionally involved that you don't want to walk away, because that never goes well. It only goes downhill.
Right.
And couples that have money who get together, especially ones who build it together, and this is really a good time to talk about these couples. When you start out, especially when you start out young, the millionaires who've been together 20, 30, 40 years, whatever, and you start out as a young couple together, and maybe you don't have a lot when you start out, but you build a business, you build a life together, and then by the time you've been together 20, 30 years, you are wealthy and you're established. There's a friendship and a relationship that exists in most of those situations where they know that, for one thing, no long-term marriage is going to exist without having its really rough spots. You meet anybody who's been married 20, 30 years, they got some stories to tell.
Oh
But
yeah. Yeah,
the
they do.
decision to stay together is what keeps them together. It's always a decision at some point to stay together rather than to walk away. But they also have a mutual respect and honor for all that they have been through, which is what still makes them decide, I'm going to stay, even though right now you got to sleep in the other room. But I'm not going anywhere, and I don't want you to leave. But right now, I don't even want to see you. Those times will come because we change and grow as we go through our lives. But when you've got a long-term established relationship and you started out with little or nothing, you also have that bond of creating and building your lives together that can weather some of the darkest storms. And those tend to be the relationships that last.
Yeah. I was going to say that I do see, some people that have built together and they really do have some type of understanding within their relationship that does make a very strong relationship. And I don't ever see them ever breaking up. I don't ever see them being so mad at each other. And if
I
they
know,
are,
and you
they
wonder, do you guys
do it in
ever argue?
private. They're
And
like, do you
sometimes
guys ever argue? Right.
they
Oh,
gotta have, no,
that's
they got stories. And if you sit down and talk to them, they'll tell you about the time. Oh yeah, there was a time when I was ready to walk out the door, but
exactly. They always have those stories.
yeah,
Exactly.
any long-term
I'm
relationship
about to
has
leave that
stories to tell.
Negro.
Yeah, I was ready to put him outside. But
Yeah.
then, when the anger passes and the hurt passes, and you look around and realize, and like I said, you get older and you get mature, you start to realize that sometimes it's not worth tearing up the household just because you're mad because of what they did. Because by tearing up the household, you end up out there on your own, or out there, suffering because of the fact, financially, because of the fact that you couldn't work it out. Now, when you get into excessive wealth, like what Michael Jordan had, where, she's getting $500 million, or Melinda Gates, that's on a whole different level, because even getting rid of half, of what you have, you're probably not going to notice it much, because your lifestyle doesn't change when
Because
you've
your
got that
lifestyle
kind of
never
wealth.
changes exactly
It
with
doesn't
that
change. It's just
transfer.
a different day of the week.
And again, Michael
But
Jordan was able to go ahead and amass $1 billion after he
yeah, he
gave
made
his
more
wife
money.
back with that money. So
Yeah,
it's like, again, that energy, it just
it's the
shifted a
energy.
different
When you
way.
get to a
That's it.
certain point, it becomes almost bulletproof.
It does.
But there are, most millionaires are not quite at that level. But I had somebody say to me the other day that in the world of the really wealthy, $100 million is not that much money, and I'm like, oh God,
Well, give it
that's
to
me.
me.
That's a little beyond my imagination to say $100 million is not a whole lot of money, but there are people that are on that level.
Yeah,
And
there
I
are.
heard another billionaire say one time in a training, he said, the thing about wealthy people, very wealthy people, is they don't make a lot of noise. He said, rich people scream, but wealthy people whisper. So
They
you may not even realize that some of the people you're dealing with or talking to every day may be very wealthy people, because they don't go around wearing it. They don't look like they're very rich or wealthy. They are not flamboyant. They're not flashy. They're very quiet, everyday looking people. Though their clothes may be designer clothes, you would not realize that that's what's going on because they are
they don't wear
very
designer
wealthy
clothes.
people.
Guys, please give us a call, 347-620-6771, 347-620-6771, if you want to lend your voice to this conversation. Now, I remember this guy, he was talking about rap singers, for instance. You could tell the status of a rap singer just based off how many chains he has around his neck. So
And how big they are.
And how big they are, right? And I thought about it, and I said, oh my goodness, he's absolutely correct. Because when rap singers do start to go to that billionaire status, the way Jay-Z and Puffy even at one point was, they hardly wear any chains around their necks.
I know.
But yeah, but as when they up and coming, then you see all the big, the big chains and everything, because at that point they're only like either multi-thousandaires or multi-millionaires only. But when you get a certain amount of wealth, you put down all that stuff. There's no need for the flash and the dash. You don't have to make that statement, because really that's what jewelry is. Like, hey, look at me.
Oh yeah, look at how much I got.
I have money. Yeah, I was able to buy this. So
it's all about, you can tell the new rich or the nouveau riche,
old money.
Nouveau riche. You can tell them versus those who are well established and secure in their wealth by very often by what they wear. And it's not to say they don't wear designer clothes, but they're designer conservative. They're not like I said, the flashy, stuff that says, look, I made a lot of money, I got a lot of money. And that quiet conservative nature is what gives them security as well, because they're not running around flashing it to the world that they got a whole lot. It's like, we've got the Kardashian riches, which they scream a lot. They've got a lot of wealth, but they're also very much in the media. They're influencers and they're very flashy people. But that's a whole different thing. That's how they made their money, and that's how they keep it, by being flashy. If Kim were to suddenly disappear from the front pages, she's got wealth and she's got, this big multi-billion-dollar company, she'd be fine. Right. But she would not, a lot of her publicity and what have you would go away if she just retired into her wealth and stayed the businesswoman. But, it's all about learning how to have the mindset. It's not necessary to have the grand wealth unless you really want it. To have a very secure and very financially stable life. Having several $1 million for most people is enough to make them very happy and very comfortable. For me, financial freedom means having enough money to where I don't have to worry about working, where I don't have to think about my bills being paid, where there is enough income that if I get sick or something happens to my business, there's still enough cash flow to maintain.
You'll always be taken care of, no matter what happens.
And, with the experiences I've had in the last few years, I quote unquote retired for the last 20 years, and now I'm out of retirement big time. But this time, and I think we had the conversation, and I said, when I establish it again this time, it's going to be enough to last me through the rest of my life, whether I'm working or not, because I'm not doing this again. I do have that millionaire energy and mindset around me because I am so uncomfortable with the lack and limitation and the not enough and the bills not being paid and struggling. It's like I'd almost rather not be here.
It's the energy. So Dame
Dash, and so I'm going to get back to that stage again, because this is not who I am.
Right, exactly. It's like you're an imposter right now.
Yeah, this is the imposter. Yeah.
Yeah. Dame Dash once said that, if you had $1 million cross your fingers, you'll have it again and again and again and again. And he was absolutely correct. Because at one point, I remember I had won a lawsuit from my job, and it was in a, 6-figure range. the low six-figure range, okay? And I kind of like lived off that money because I had to raise my son. I was in college, whatever.
Mm,
And I remember the money was going down. It was just dwindling down. And I was like, damn, that money looks so cute in my bank account.
yeah.
But when I heard him say that, I was like, that's true. If I had it before, I'll get it again and again and again. And that has always been my mindset, always. And I keep telling people that don't get scared when you start to see your money like dwindle a little bit. Just know that you can always raise it again. Okay, raise your
As
energy
long as
level.
you don't let it dwindle to nothing, it's important to not let it get too low, because one of the things in this world that is very true, there's a statement that says it takes money to make money.
It does.
And that is a true statement, because if it gets too low where you can't meet the average expenses, you won't be able to build anything. You're too busy surviving.
Correct.
So it's important to pay attention to when your resources get to the critical point. You need to know what that point is, because if nothing else, I mean, you can get sick. And with the kinds of diseases and shit we got going around out there now, like COVID came along, nobody saw that coming, but it took half the world, knocked the knees out from under everybody.
Right.
And, it was devastating to the point where not only did people get sick and weren't able to work while they were sick, but some people never really healed and are just now starting to get back to where they can work and function again.
Hmm.
Nobody thought that something that looked like the flu would last 4 or 5 years, to the point where now you're just now starting to get your strength back, let alone the numbers of people that died.
Right.
So the
But you can't live
critical
in fear
point,
either. A lot of people have that fear energy, and fear energy
fear,
is what
yeah,
keeps
fear
people
can't
on a
be part
very
of
low
it.
frequency. Oh my
Fear
goodness, this
is
is going on. And the next thing you know, you're going to be there for a long time. You
The
have
fear
to not
energy
be
is one of
fearful.
the worst.
It
It's
is.
one of the worst. It's
It
one of the
is.
lowest. It's one lowest. Fear and depression and anger
It's
are the three
shame.
lowest. They're the three
Shame
lowest.
too.
Shame. They're way down there, so low on the
It's
vibrational frequency
so
scale
low.
that you got to work your way up to a point where you're a little bit more neutral before you
Correct.
can start to really make things happen again. And that's why it's important to not get that far down, because it takes a lot of strength and a lot of work to try to pull yourself out of that pit. It really becomes like quicksand. It
It
sucks
does.
your energy, because when you don't have the resources, fear becomes almost secondary to the fact of, oh my God, what's going to happen if this, that, if I don't get this,
Because
if I
fear
don't get that.
paralyzes your energy field. It
It really
paralyzes your
does.
energy
It
field.
really
So
does.
you're unable to move forward.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're unable to move backwards.
Yeah, it can put you, fear can put
Yeah.
you in bed from just not only paralysis, it's the fear can make you sick. It can
It
make
can make
you
you sick.
ill.
Yeah.
And once your body starts to break down, then it's like now you're really, really stuck, because if you don't have your health, it's very hard to be positive and work towards a higher frequency and to repair
Mhm.
your life when you don't have your health.
Yeah. Yeah. So some things about millionaires and why they marry, specifically Black women. Millionaires view marriage less as a fairy tale and more as a long-term partnership.
Yep, more like a business relationship in
It
many
is a
ways.
business relationship. Yeah. And even though they may have the money and they may marry somebody with less money, they still see like this person is going to build with them in some form or
Mhm,
fashion. Okay.
mhm, mhm,
Specifically, if this is a male millionaire and a female counterpart. All right.
mhm.
Okay. Emotional stability creates mental clarity. A supportive marriage can reduce chaos, distractions, and costly personal decisions, freeing your energy to focus on growth and opportunity. That is so true.
That's it.
Yeah,
The partnership of two people focusing on a common goal magnifies that energy, so that
yeah,
it's easier to make it happen when you both have the same goals and the
yeah,
same desires. It's when you're not working in harmony that things go out of balance. And then it's very difficult for one person to make things happen when the other one is not working in coherence with them. Um, and it's much easier to make things happen when you are in harmony with your partner, because it feeds that energy of the, in a relationship, especially a marriage, there is the husband, and this could be whether it's same-sex marriage or not. There's one partner, there's the other partner, and then there's the relationship, and it
Correct.
creates a triangular relationship that is a very stable geometric structure. And that's kind of what a good marriage, a good relationship creates, a very stable, energetic structure that you can build on. The triangle is probably the most stable structure of all the shapes in creation. So
Yeah.
when you create that energy of the two partners and the relationship, you create a stable environment for everything to be built on.
And it does create that triangle structure. And a triangle in esoteric terms means a lot. It means an awakening. It means,
Mhm,
the
mhm,
eye.
mhm.
Okay. It's an awakening. All right. Another, okay. You know what? This statement here reminds me of the rapper Eve. In a world where wealth attracts opportunists, marriage offers deep trust and loyalty. For many millionaires, having one person they can fully trust is priceless. And the reason why I say that is because I have seen an influx of millionaires marrying Black women. And I'm thinking of Eve. And, even though Eve was a millionaire in her own right, she married a billionaire. I think her husband is in the billions. And a lot of people always rag on her, whatever, but there was a trust between them, which is why of course, he was attracted to her, but he also trusted her, which was very, very important in a relationship. Now, when I first got my first insurance job, I remember the guy who hired me was a white guy. And I asked him, like, yo, like, why did you hire me of all people? I don't even have experience in this field. And he was like, you know what? He said, because he said, not for nothing, Black women are very trustworthy.
When we are honorable, oh God, yes.
Yeah, he
Yes,
said
we
Black
are.
women are very trustworthy. He said, and on top of that, you guys don't complain. You do your work. And he said, and you're not gonna sit here and complain more than you work. He said, I don't mind you complaining. He said, but you're gonna work more than you complain. That took
That's
me back.
part of what we
Like,
have to do
wow.
to make it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
unfortunately,
that's
we have to be twice as good in order to make it. But
yeah.
um, to have a boss that recognizes that is gold, because he
Yeah.
will give you opportunities that other people won't. And because there's just as many bosses out there that don't appreciate that quality in us and can use it against
They
us.
use it against us. Yeah.
Yeah, they use it
And
against
he's
us.
the one who started my career in the field. Although he kind of treated me like a mule afterwards, just running me and not really paying me my worth. But still, he is the one who got me into the insurance field. So that was
All it
awesome.
takes is one good break, and you can,
Yeah.
and a good intelligent person can run with it. So you were very blessed and very fortunate that you had that opportunity, and
I
smart because
was.
you took advantage of it.
Yeah, exactly. This is another thing that we talked about earlier. They said marriage can still signal stability, credibility, and maturity in certain business and social circles. For some, it reinforces their public and professional image. And that's
Yes,
another reason why millionaires are, because marriage does look like it looks like they can create and form a great partnership. And when they're looked upon, by their business counterparts love that. If they see that you have a good marriage, they're more willing to do business with you, knowing that you
because
are married.
it says that it says stability. It says you've got a family structure that's going to support you, that you're not going to be, especially for a man, you're not
Yeah,
going to be out there chasing everything, every skirt, and being distracted by all this other, single life stuff.
That
You've
single
got
lifestyle,
a
right? You
home
have
life.
responsibility.
Yeah, you've got the foundation that's needed to be consistent. Therefore, you can be trusted because you understand the need to have a stable environment in order to be successful. And it's not to say that a single person can't be, but just when you think about, the reputation, excuse me, that single men and single women, for that matter, single women, um, because the perception in business, single women it's a whole different world for us, but a single man has the reputation that he, instead of taking care of
He's a
business and doing what he's
playboy.
supposed to, yeah, that he's out chasing women all night. He's going to be, taking risks and doing things that a married man would not. For a single woman, it becomes a matter of, well, why aren't you in a stable relationship? Why aren't, are you one of those women where, because I've been called one of those women, where you are too harsh and too strong and too rigid to be in a loving relationship. In other words, what's wrong with you that somebody doesn't want to be with you?
But
Could
when it
be
comes to like
it's
being a
nothing but
millionaire,
that's the perception.
but when it comes to being a millionaire, women millionaires are looked at differently than male millionaires. Like they
Mhm.
do sometimes expect for women millionaires to be single. Like it will be okay if they were. They're not going to like berate them if they weren't. Not like how men get berated. Not at all. Think about
Yeah,
that.
that's probably true. At the same time, and generally speaking, a female millionaire, she will have a better choice of potential partners because
Right.
she's got to marry up. Whereas for a man, like you mentioned earlier, Jay-Z could walk into McDonald's and marry the cashier and nobody would give it a second thought. But Beyonce walked in there and start talking to the cashier, they're going to be saying, "Girl, what's wrong with you? You can do better than that."
You can do better than
And
that.
that
Right.
mindset
Exactly.
still prevails.
Yes.
So a
Mindset.
single woman millionaire is looked at as someone who understands finance, who's got a certain amount of stability and intelligence about her, or she wouldn't be a millionaire. And so the single men out there that would orbit around her will be other wealthy men. Of course, other, maybe not so wealthy men too, but depending on who she chooses, speaks
Yeah.
volumes about how she will be perceived from that point on.
Exactly. Another point that is made: a good spouse can help protect wealth, a bad one can destroy it. Millionaires who
Absolutely.
marry wisely often prioritize financial literacy, boundaries, and self control in a partner. Who, child, that right there is a word. That right there is a
Yeah,
word because that is so
that's
true.
the key. That's what we've been talking about this
And
whole
that's what we've been talking about
time,
this
is
whole
that
entire
that
time.
that discipline and that understanding of the mindset that sustains and supports
Yeah.
the financial situation and also can help it to grow is very important, because if it's someone who doesn't understand it or who lives in a way that is detrimental to it, it can destroy it, and it doesn't take long.
Right.
It won't
Exactly.
take long. For people that have money, very often when they're looking at another partner, if they're single for whatever reason, they're not only looking at who this partner is, they're looking at how they behave, what they think, and how they do. And sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes a wealthy man will get caught up with a woman who is not right for him or who is all about herself. And even sometimes, though, men with money don't mind if they have a selfish wife. Long as she looks good and makes, presents well, she's okay.
Yeah, they really
So
don't care. I know a lot of men that
yeah,
are
they
like that
don't
don't care
care.
that their wife is selfish and they just care about how she looks and how she presents
Yeah,
on his arm
yeah,
when he shows her off to the companies at the
right,
company or holiday party.
right,
If she looks good, he's okay with that. He doesn't care. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This has been a awesome, awesome conversation. I just wish that a lot of men knew that marriage in this society will make them look a lot better, and it also will energetically increase their wealth, whether they want to believe it or not. Unfortunately, we are in this patriarchal society. This is something that men built. Okay,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
built this shit. All right,
You know,
so
and the men who are just coming up and growing and building, they just need to be discerning in the partner that they choose.
that's
They have
another thing
to
I was
not
going to
chase
say.
the body and the looks of a woman, um, especially when they're concerned that she might take something from me, and that mindset of she might take something from me is going to keep you stuck where you are, because what you should be looking for is a partner who can contribute, not so much in money but in support of you and
Yeah,
what you're doing, and the
right.
stability and respect of the relationship as a valuable asset.
Yeah,
So, and it may be necessary to choose one who may not be so fine, but who may be intelligent and understanding of what you can build together, because that's what's going to build long-term wealth and security. If she's supportive and can help contribute to what you're building together, and you are respectful and sensitive to who she is and what she needs, you got a good chance of making it. But remember, almost every millionaire, billionaire out there started somewhere. And even Jeff Bezos started working in his parents' garage, I think it was. He wasn't wealthy when he started Amazon. And I remember when he started Amazon because I was one of his first customers back when he was selling books and vitamins. Um, I started with Amazon way back then. And then, of course, look at now, he's one of the richest men on the planet. But he started with a laptop, or maybe it was just a desktop, working in a little room where he started selling books. And here, 30 years later, it's an empire.
yeah. I remember this one guy told me, he said that men marry when they're poor, they marry who they can. When they rich, they marry who they want or who they
Well,
desire.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But if you can be one of those who gets in when he's marrying who he can, you could be in a very good position 20 years down the line. Because that means if you guys stay together and he's doing well, then your marriage is pretty solid, if for no other reason than you've got too much going on to split up. So, because I tell you, once a woman is past her quote unquote prime, out of the 30s, let's say 20s and 30s for a woman, and unfortunately, it's still the mindset of our society.
I
20s and
know.
30s and maybe the 40s are still a woman's prime time. But once you get
I
past
got one more
50,
year.
well, it's just the way it is. I wish it wasn't that way, believe me, because there's nothing wrong with me. I'm still a very vital and capable woman, but a lot of people look at my age and think I should be going somewhere in the corner and sitting down. And it's like, get out of my way because I got things to do.
Okay.
But in the prime years, when a woman is at her most attractive and most vital and capable, if you can get a good relationship and start building on that relationship together, you will find yourself much better off when you do hit the 50s and 60s, because you will have financial security. And in today's world, that's probably one of the most important investments you can make in your future, because don't think Social Security is going to do anything for you. Not only may it not be there, it's insufficient for
Right.
you to live off of. You will not be able to think you're going to grow older and retire. And the lesson we are seeing right now with the 300,000 Black women that got laid off from what they thought were long-term secure jobs. The lesson is depend on yourself. Make sure that you have what you need and that you're not depending on a job or anything else outside of what you can control to secure your future. We don't know 20, 30 years from now what our economy and what our society is going to look like.
Right.
Everything is in transition and there's so much change going on. We have no idea what's coming. One of the things that I will tell you is coming, and that is that we will not be on the same currency system that we're on. It's going to be digital. So you need to start looking at what can you do now to convert and prepare yourself for a future that you can't quite see yet, something that you don't quite understand because it's still taking form. But
Mm.
just know a lot of change is coming, and the only person you really have to depend on is yourself and a good partner. If you can get in a relationship where you can build together and understand the necessities, economics, marriage is a business. It's not
It
just
is
a
a business,
relationship,
nothing
it's
but
a
a
business.
business.
Yeah,
And I
and
keep telling people that
it's
marriage is a
something
business.
that people have to really recognize must be run like a business.
Yeah. And this is to my Black women in this reality that we are in. We know our plight, especially with our men. And we know not everybody and not everyone is going to marry a millionaire. I don't believe there's
Right.
enough to go around. So, what I say is, sisters, get your money up. We got the power to get our money up, we have the power to secure our futures. Okay. So, get your money. Don't rely on anybody, okay, to give you your money. You get
And it
you
depends
need to get
on
your
the
money up. Get your
situation.
money up.
Sometimes a smart woman can be the breadwinner that really makes a relationship go forward. When I was younger and growing up, there were several relationships that I knew about where the woman was the real income earner, but the relationship, they were good partners. But maybe, like, I remember it was one lady, she was like drop dead powerful at network marketing. I don't know how she was the way she was, but she
Mhm.
could make money so fast at network marketing. Well, her husband owned a gas station, and that's what he liked doing, working on cars and running the gas station. But she was the one that was making $300,000-$400,000. This is back in the 80s.
Oh
And
wow.
she was the one, yeah. So you know how much that was, a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
And so because she, and I forgot that she was doing, I don't think it was Mary Kay, but it might have been.
Mm,
Um, but the thing is, whoever is the best breadwinner should be allowed to do that. It doesn't have to be always the man. It can be the woman in a good relationship where he understands you got the knowledge and the ability to make all the money. I'm going to support you and make sure you got whatever you need to do what you're doing because you're doing it for us. That works too. And for Black
that
women,
does
sometimes
work and
that's
it's
a better
very rare.
alternative
Yeah.
because we can do that. Sometimes we get the breaks and the opportunities that our men don't. But
Right.
for the men, I'm saying to you, just because she's a woman doesn't mean she can't be the major breadwinner, and recognize that when she's making money and you guys are a partnership and you're working together as husband and wife, she gonna share that money with you. And
Exactly.
don't let your
And a lot of
ego
men
tell
are
you
afraid to be
you gotta
stepmen.
do that. Huh?
They're afraid. A lot of men are afraid to be stepmen to Oprah. They don't want to be stepmen. They want
I
to be
know.
Bezos.
But Stedman is the one that's living in the mansion and flying on her private jet. And she's the one that has helped him become he's a millionaire,
Yeah, he's a
multimillionaire in his
millionaire in
own
his
right.
own right.
She,
Right.
yeah, she didn't,
Exactly.
he didn't go in there and set out on her and live off of her. Good Kid went in there and she helped him build his multi-million-dollar industry. He's a very successful man
Yeah.
in his own right. Now, granted that it was her, popularity and connections that helped him, but so what? He
Yeah.
didn't sit around complaining about and using her. He got out there and did what he had to do. So I don't know, if men's egos are so fragile that they would say, well, I don't want to be a Stedman because I want to be Jeff Bezos. Well, so what? Get out there and be Jeff
You
Bezos, and
can
both
be
of you
Jeff
guys are
Bezos, right?
billionaires. Yeah,
Exactly.
both of you guys be billionaires. But if she can bring in the money and have the connections to give to open doors for you, so fucking what? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody is quick to step into the curb because of the fact that he's with her. He's like, come on over here and let's make some money. Because they know he understands what that is.
Right. Exactly.
And he's all about business. So
It's all about
get
his
over your
business.
ego. Your ego will keep you broke, poor, and stupid.
Yes. And in a very low frequency. A
Very low
very low
frequency.
frequency.
But whoever is good at making money is the one that needs to get out there and start the ball rolling and then work together as a partnership. Run your business, your marriage as a business. And
Mhm.
remember that if you love each other and you're really a good, mature, emotionally mature person, you're going to recognize how to honor each other. The numbers on the bottom line does not determine the success of a relationship or of an individual. It's who you are as a person, a whole person.
It really is who you are as a whole person. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this conversation. I appreciate you, mother, sister. And
I
we
think
will
we
be
should
back, I
insist
think.
on it.
I think we're going to be back next week. I have to double check and see. This might be our last show until 2026, but we may film something and just it won't be live.
Okay.
We'll talk behind the scenes. But anyway, guys, thank you for joining us, and we will see you later.
Yeah, and very, very happy holidays, especially if we don't see you guys again before the new year. Enjoy the rest of this year. Remember to love each other, to love yourself, and
Love
to be
yourself.
open and receptive. The new energies coming in for 2026, this is going to be different.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be talking about it later today on Facebook about how it's going to be different. We finally kind of now figured this out. And
Yeah.
so all I'm saying to you is be aware that life as we know it has changed and it's not going back. So start to think about new ways that you can be present for yourself, for your family, and your loved ones in the new year. It's going to be an interesting ride.
Yeah, we will be doing a show about next year, 2026, and what it will entail. All
Okay.
right, guys. Yep.
Love
Thank
you
you,
all.
guys. Have a good
Take
day.
care.